Hello, friends, and welcome to yet another edition of SCLC Today TV. I'm your host, Maynard Eaton. Of course, we're joined by our president and CEO, Dr. Charles Steele Jr. Dr. Steele, as you well know, the presidential election is being challenged. It's still undetermined, according to President Trump. He's alleging a fix, but it means that there are those who suggest he's trying to delegitimize this election and actually pull off a coup d'etat. Have you heard that?
Yes, of course. It's a sign of a dictator. The Republic and the Democratic makeup of this country will not allow that. You know, you have people who get intoxicated with power. But, you know, also, Mr. Eaton, what the Oval Office at this particular time don't understand, mentally, this has really disturbed a lot of people in terms of this type of leadership in America. To have one individual and his family to thrust his influence and his family or the institution of his family to try and have a dictatorial type of form of government. This will not survive. It would not be a reality within this day and time. But he has the right to play his card. One thing about it, he's talking about the future and maybe bringing along his family connection into politics. But I'm here to say the reason many Republicans have not come out is that they're afraid. And I don't have no respect for anyone in a leading role of leadership in terms of politics and business to say that they're afraid to come out and do what's right, due to the fact they might get some death threats. My Lord, is this man a hoodlum? Is he a member of the gangster connection? Why would any elected official say that they're afraid? You need to put commitment over your fact of not having enough courage to stand up for what's right. Your opportunities and your time in a public service, public office is very limited. The people are not going to tolerate it, and the people are not that insane as you think they are.
Well, as you know, and always remind us, SCLC is an international organization. But international leaders, foreign leaders in France and Germany, among others, have embraced President-elect Biden. Doesn't that say something?
Yeah, especially those European countries and basically the allies for many of years. But you still have people who have the lack withal, just like some of our U.S. senators who are afraid to stand up for what's right. My position is, as a world leader, as a nation leader, what in the world are you being in a decision-making position like a president of a country or the U.S. Senate or any form of the political arena, even in the legislature down to the mayors, and you sustain yourself on something that's not factual, on something that's irrespectable in terms of the leadership of the American people, and totally disrespect of the electoral process. You need to understand that people in this system will not tolerate it. And I like to say what my grandmama used to say, what goes around, come around.
But as this transition between the president-elect and President Trump has been stymied, if not frustrated, isn't this a dangerous time for America? If I was a foreign enemy, wouldn't this be the time to strike? Wouldn't this be the time to strike?
Very dangerous. Not to mention just mentally upon the citizenry within this country. But as you say, the weakness is being shown in terms of us not being united. We are the United States of America. Now, the other part of that is that we as African Americans have got to make a demand. We have got to stand up. I don't care who's in office. We have to collaborate. And I say again, the biggest problem within the African American and poor people issues happen to be the lack of collaboration. That's a word that we don't use that often, but it's power in unity, and collaboration is the first step.
I read a lot of opinion pieces by some black pundits and some black female leaders particularly who say the black vote delivered for President-elect Biden. What is he going to deliver for us? That's what you mean by we have to demand something. We didn't ask much of President Obama. I think we should ask much, or I heard others say we should ask much, much more of President-elect Biden.
Absolutely. We did not ask for anything from President Barack Obama. As much as I love him and think he did his best, he could have been a greater president for black folks had we put more demand on him in terms of our livelihood. And it's a known fact. It's documented that this system is racist. And I don't care if you're black, white, green, or blue. If you lead this system, you need to understand the fact in terms of the book of Esther, when Mordecai said to Esther, and I'm being redundant, I'm always be redundant because repetition is the mother's skill. Sometimes it goes over folks' head. When Mordecai told Esther, why do you think God put you in a position for such a time as this? It is to bring about the executive order to get the attention and to bring about the replacement of the racist attitudes and the gutting of Section 4 and Section 5. Also, reparation. Black folks have never been in position where this country was sensitive enough to know that we owe y'all something. We're not talking about backing up a dump truck full of money to our front door or back door, or let us go to the mall and be given cash money. We're talking about cash opportunities. We're talking about going to the bank when you got a history of 3% of the loans that's given out in the institutionalized financial system here in America. Only 3% go to black folks. It's all about the money, Mr. Eaton. What is politics? Politics dictates who's going to get the money. And we've been so nice and so asinine and so immune to the fact that it's about the resources and the opportunity that people need to spend. I was talking to a young man the other day. They got $21 million in a particular trust fund that need to be spent before the end of this year. Or else it goes back to the government. Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, and other states have money where they can put folks to work in the electrical place of doing business, in consulting business, in the expertise of many African Americans and poor people. But guess what? They sitting on the money. And it's all about, we don't want you to have the resources because this is a capitalistic society. And if you're without the capital, you are enslaved.
What's the quote? Power concedes nothing without demand. I heard you say
Hello. Yes, sir. You own it, Mr. Eaton. And let me just say, since you brought it up, that was Frederick Douglass. It said power concedes to nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will.
Speaking of power, the power of the U.S. Senate may rest with the special election outcome right there in Georgia. The whole world is watching Georgia. Much of the political world, consultants and pundits, are almost right outside our door at SCLC because of the two Senate races between going on now in Georgia. They could decide the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. A lot of them in the town.
Well, let's do first things first. Politicians, people running for office, public office, are not spending money in the black community. And I'm very irate about that, very disturbed about that. The fact being is that you're having hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on one race in particular that came out of South Carolina. Fine, I know Jamie, attorney, great leader, Jamie Harrison. But Jamie has the astuteness and the ability to raise $100 million. And all I'm saying is that we need a network of folks around this country to bring in resources to collaborate with Mr. Harrison in South Carolina, overlap that money. You still got some money. Bring it to Georgia. Bring it to this race. If you raise $100 million, we can very easily facilitate that and put it into jobs. Hello, somebody. Let's put it into jobs. When you create and bring money to the minority African-American people of color community, and you put it on the ground, we don't own television stations. We don't own but maybe a handful of radio stations. And that's limitation. But we do own the record of knocking on doors and our feet. They might get a little tired and we get weary sometimes, but we can keep moving. As Dr. King said, you know, if you don't have an automobile, run. If you can't run, walk. You can't walk, crawl. By all means, keep moving. We can move this system if we have the resources. Others in Michigan and others throughout this country, put your eye on Georgia and bring us some resources.
I gotta say something. As a Black journalist, I'd be remiss if I did not add to your list. We have Black newspapers where they can advertise, and who have been struggling for years.
Absolutely.
Atlanta Voice, Atlanta Tribune, Atlanta Daily World. I mean, these are papers.
What would we do?
Columbus.
What would we do without our Black newspapers? Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Will Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff raise that kind of money? Do they have a chance, you think, with the whole world watching? Will Blacks really make a difference in those races?
It all depends on the resources. I think they're doing. I think they are two viable candidates. But the point being is that people don't have to vote against you, but they can stay at home if you don't rejuvenate them or motivate them, recalibrate them to some degree. And that takes resources. That's take putting jobs in the community for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks.
Also, this race, these races here in Georgia, will impact the balance of power in the U.S. Senate, where Kamala Harris now has the deciding breaking vote. That puts her in a key position, whether we win one or two of these races, does it not?
Very, very much so. She could break the tie as vice president. And let me just comment on Ms. Harris. I think she's going to do a great job. I think she would be very concerned about prioritizing the criminal justice reform. I like to call it the criminal legal reform because ain't no justice in our criminal process of criminal justice. It's a legal system that's not just. I think she's going to make a priority. And the record will speak for itself. I think she would make it a priority to do what's right in terms of the criminal justice reform. And it does need to be reformed. And what we all should be conscious of, you don't have to be an elected official, is that the eyes of history, as none other than Hamilton said, Alexander Hamilton, that the eyes of history is watching all of us in terms of leadership. What is history going to say about you and your opportunities you had as a leader and not helping your people, or to enhance and bring about the upward mobility and tell the story how you help your people? Because God put you in a position for such a time as this.
I got to mention this. So I was sitting in a barbershop today. There was a long conversation about how President Obama or now Kamala Harris, they're both mixed race Black folks. That we've never had a higher elected official who was like you or me.
From the transatlantic African slave trade. That's what you're referring to. With American slave blood in us. And it has not happened. I agree with you. You can't argue with the facts. You can talk loud about and say a few words, but you can't argue with the facts. And you're absolutely correct.
Finally, I'm going to end on this note. A child of the civil rights movement, a child of SCLC, is running to fill briefly the seat of Representative John Lewis. Kwanzaa Hall, he's in a runoff as well. Much chance of him having that. To me, that'd be so figuratively a civil rights guy passing a torch, if you will, only briefly, to a child of the civil rights movement. Wouldn't that be kind of poetic?
Yeah. And you have to be fair. And Dr. Robert Franklin, who's former president of Morehouse College, great institution, and the historicity behind that in its own right, as well as being a professor at Emory University. But the fact being is that it's a very limited, short period of time that this would take place. And many folks didn't realize this, that, running for this particular old district of none other than a great deceased, a person who made that transition along the way, Congressman John Lewis, that it's just a few days that whoever win the District 5 congressional seat would be there just for a few days. But who's to say that no impact will be made? I'm still disturbed over the fact that it was not democratically done to open the opportunities for those who wanted to pursue that district to run for office, because the Georgia Democratic Party agreed to have its name on the ballot in terms of the person that was chair of the Democratic Party who ran in the general election against a Republican. But the governor himself announced a special election. So many people were conflictual, confused, if you understand what I'm saying with that verbiage.
Well, I do understand this. Democratic politics, Black politics, Republican politics, they all leave much to be desired.
We can improve on all of it. Absolutely. It's all about dignity and respectability.
This has been our president, our SCLC president, CEO, Dr. Charles Steele Jr. I'm Maynard Eaton. We'll see you next week.